Garcelle Beauvais announced that she would be stepping away from the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills after 5 years on the show. Her decision became clear after the tense final reunion episode of season 14. That reunion was particularly difficult for Garcelle, as she found herself facing criticism and isolation, with even Sutton Stracke, her longtime friend, offering no support. Sutton, an often polarizing character on the show, had a challenging season. She found herself at odds with several cast members, and her approach to conflict didn't help her situation. Despite this, Garcelle remained loyal and supportive to Sutton, continuing to be the friend who stood by her side, even when Sutton was at her lowest. This season, Sutton's storyline was marked by a tumultuous feud with Dorit Kemsley, which seemed to overshadow much of her screen time. Her conflict with Dorit became more intense, particularly as she navigated her separation from her husband, Paul Kemsley. Fellow cast member Erika Jayne remarked on Sutton's pattern of confronting women when they were vulnerable, and the reunion proved her point. At the reunion, however, it was Garcelle who found herself on the receiving end of criticism from her castmates, while Sutton seemed to escape much of the heat. As a viewer, it was surprising to see the dynamic shift in such a dramatic way. Garcelle, who had been mostly neutral in the season's conflicts, suddenly found herself in the crosshairs, with old issues being dredged up for reasons that weren't entirely clear. It was painful to watch her being attacked, especially since no one, including Sutton, stepped up to defend her. In the midst of the reunion, Sutton appeared to be more concerned with managing her own situation than helping Garcelle, despite their close bond. Had the roles been reversed, Garcelle would have likely spoken up for Sutton, shutting down any criticism. But Sutton, in that critical moment, remained silent. Throughout the season, Sutton's actions reflected her struggle to secure approval from other cast members. Her pursuit of validation from others seemed to overshadow her friendship with Garcelle. Garcelle, on the other hand, had always been a steadfast ally and one of the most supportive friends on the show. Perhaps next season, Sutton will realize the value of the true friendship she had in Garcelle when she finds herself facing challenges without her best friend by her side. As the reunion drew to a close, Andy Cohen asked each woman to share their most pleasant surprise of the season. Sutton, who had spent much of the reunion in conflict, said that her highlight was getting along with Erika Jayne. This, despite the fact that Erika had spent much of the reunion insulting Garcelle and belittling her in front of the group. For Garcelle, this moment felt like the final straw. It was hard not to agree with Erika's earlier critique of Sutton, and the reunion made it clear that Sutton had missed the opportunity to be the friend Garcelle needed in that moment. Sutton's alignment with Erika in the final moments of the reunion only added insult to injury. Once again, Sutton seemed to kick Garcelle when she was down, and this time it was even harder to watch. Garcelle deserved much more than what she received from those around her. Garcelle Beauvais and the rift of friendship. The lights of the reunion set flickered overhead as the final moments of season 14 of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills played out. Garcelle Beauvais sat tall, poised, but internally, she was fighting a battle of emotions she had never expected to experience. After 5 years of highs and lows, friendships forged and frayed, Garcelle had made the decision that stunned her fans and castmates alike. She would be stepping away from the show. The moment felt surreal, but the weight of the season, and particularly the final reunion episode, had made her decision clear. The reunion was supposed to be a place for closure, a place where castmates could confront their issues, air grievances, and perhaps even find some sort of reconciliation. But for Garcelle, it had turned into a battlefield where she stood alone, blindsided by the lack of support from those she had considered friends. It wasn't lost on Garcelle that this particular reunion had been more difficult than any other. There she sat, facing not only the uncomfortable reality of criticism from her castmates, but also the painful truth of her friendships, or lack thereof. The episode had been filled with sharp words, icy glances, and accusations that left Garcelle reeling. But what struck her the most was the absence of the one person she had always stood by, Sutton Stracke. A bond tested, Garcelle and Sutton had been through a lot together. From the moment Garcelle joined the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Sutton had been one of the few cast members who truly supported her. In a world of shifting allegiances and ever-changing dynamics, Garcelle had found a true confidant in Sutton, someone who understood the unique pressures of being an outsider in a world dominated by wealth, influence, and drama. But this season, something had shifted. Sutton's own storyline had been marked by turmoil. Her feud with Dorrit Kemsley had taken center stage, and the intensity of their conflict seemed to overshadow her role in the group. But it wasn't just the fight with Dorrit that made Sutton stand out this season. It was her struggle to navigate her own personal life, her separation from her husband, Paul Kemsley, and the emotional toll it took on her. Amidst all of this, Sutton's attempts to find stability and approval from the other women seemed to blind her to the needs of her longtime friend, Garcelle. Throughout the season, Garcelle had remained supportive of Sutton, even when Sutton's actions seemed to alienate her from the rest of the group. When Sutton's vulnerability was exposed on camera, Garcelle was the one who consistently stepped in to offer words of comfort and understanding. She didn't judge her friend for her emotional outbursts or for the way she handled conflict. Instead, Garcelle offered a steady presence, a reminder that no matter what, Sutton wasn't alone. But the reunion was a different story. As the episode unfolded, Garcelle found herself being criticized from every angle. Castmates who had previously been her allies seemed more than willing to take shots at her, dredging up past grievances and questioning her loyalty. And in the middle of it all, Sutton remained silent. Garcelle's mind raced as she tried to process the events that were unfolding. She had expected her friend, Sutton, to speak up, to defend her when the accusations and insults came flying. After all, wasn't this the same friend who had always leaned on Garcelle for support? Wasn't this the same woman who had cried on Garcelle's shoulder during difficult moments? But in the midst of the reunion, Sutton's focus was entirely on herself. She appeared more concerned with managing her own public image and finding approval from the other women than being there for Garcelle. Sutton's silence in that moment stung more than any of the harsh words coming from the other cast members. It was as though Garcelle's loyalty had been taken for granted. If the roles had been reversed, Garcelle would have stepped in without hesitation, shutting down any criticism of her friend. She would have been the first to defend Sutton, to remind the group of the kind of friend Sutton had been. But Sutton, when Garcelle needed her most, was nowhere to be found. The final straw. As the reunion continued, it became clear that Garcelle was no longer just facing her own battles, but also confronting the painful realization that some of her relationships had been built on shaky foundations. The most surprising moment of all came when Andy Cohen asked each of the women to share their most pleasant surprise of the season. Sutton's response was, to Garcelle, a final blow. With a smile, Sutton declared that her highlight of the season had been getting along with Erika Jayne. For Garcelle, this felt like a slap in the face. Erika had spent much of the reunion belittling Garcelle, making cutting remarks about her character, and undermining her in front of the group. And yet, here was Sutton, the woman Garcelle had supported through thick and thin, aligning herself with Erika, the very person who had been part of the onslaught of attacks against Garcelle. It was at that moment that Garcelle understood the depth of the divide between her and Sutton. It wasn't just about a few misunderstandings or differences of opinion. It was about a fundamental disconnect in values. Garcelle had always believed that true friendship meant having each other's backs, no matter the cost. But Sutton, it seemed, had been more interested in fitting in with the group and securing her place among the women than in maintaining the integrity of their friendship. Garcelle's heart ached as she watched Sutton offer this empty statement, clearly unaware of the pain it caused. It wasn't just about the lack of support during the reunion, it was about everything that had led up to this moment. The friendship that had once felt so solid, so unbreakable, now seemed fragile and tenuous. And for Garcelle, that realization was devastating. A moment of clarity. As the reunion drew to a close, Garcelle couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. She had come to the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, hoping to share her story, to add her voice to the narrative of a group of women who were often defined by their wealth and status. She had wanted to show that there was more to her than just being a housewife, that she was a woman with a strong sense of self, someone who could navigate the complexities of fame, family, and friendship with grace and dignity.